Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be getting started here in just a moment. Got just about 1 minute to the top of the hour. All right, well, I am showing 12 o'clock Eastern here on the dot, so we'll go ahead and dive right into the webinar today. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending today's webinar on Office 365 Customer and Vendor Portals. I'm Kat Withrich from Admiral Consulting Group. If you don't know us, we are a Microsoft Gold partner. We specialize in business management solutions here in the New Jersey metro area, and we work with clients around the world. Today, we've invited DynamicPoint here. They're going to show us their customer and vendor portal solutions. Hopefully today we can start to give you some ideas about how you can use portals to automate your entire business processes, to improve end user experiences, whether that's your vendor, your customer, or even your employee. And we'd love for this session to be interactive. If you do have questions, please pop them into the chat box, the Q&A box. We'd be happy to answer those questions either during the session if there's time, or certainly we can follow up with any additional information if needed. So that's a little housekeeping for the session today. I'm going to turn things over to Mike Marson. He's the Director of Business Development for DynamicPoint. He's here today to tell us all about the portal solution and start to see how it could work in some certain scenarios for your organization. So with that, Mike, I'm going to turn that right over to you.
Thank you so much, Kat. I appreciate the introduction, and thank you so much to you and Admiral for hosting us today. So I appreciate it. So we have a half an hour today, so it's not a ton of time, and we are going to go through Office 365 for vendor, customer, as well as just the employee portals, just a general concept of using Office 365 and SharePoint to enable portal solutions, regardless of the audience. So the agenda for today's call, we're going to go through a little introduction on who DynamicPoint is, and start giving you some ideas on what we mean by business automation. It's sort of a vague term that you see thrown out there, but we're going to go through some specific examples of how you could use an Office 365 portal to start doing business automations. And then we're going to go through a demo. And the demo is basically going to be 3 steps. The first is the general overview of what is a portal, what can I use a portal for, and start on sort of the elementary level of collaboration and sharing reports with customers and vendors. And then we're going to walk through 2 business automation examples. One is a vendor onboarding, in which we're going to pretend to be a company trying to onboard a new vendor. We're going to send out some requests to this proposed vendor, gather some documentation, etc. And then the next one is a customer contract renewal. So we intentionally sort of picked an example from either side. There's plenty of other examples I could discuss as well as we go through this, but we intentionally picked one from the customer as well as the vendor side so we could give you some food for thought. You could see how it's working with the Office 365 technology, how the portal is being used as a foundation, and how it's all working together. And obviously you could take that and apply it to your own situation of how it could be used for you. And then closing, just some further reading and Q&A. As Kat says, please ask questions as we're going through it. It's intended to be interactive, so we don't have to wait till a formal Q&A session at the end. So that's the agenda for today. Quick intro on who DynamicPoint is. So the high level in a nutshell is DynamicPoint is an Office 365 app development company. That's what we are. And for people who are sort of not familiar with this concept, like what does it mean to be an Office 365 app development company? I basically draw the analogy of adding an app to your mobile phone. I'm sure all of us on this call have added an app to our mobile phone. You add the app and it starts asking you all these questions. Can I use your camera? Can I use your location? All these things that we probably don't really read, and we just say yes to get the darn thing to install. But that is the app using the framework, right? And the framework is obviously a pretty powerful one, an iPhone or an Android or whatever. And we are doing that same thing, but we're using Office 365 as our platform. So obviously geared more towards businesses than individuals. but that's going to be the ecosystem that we're leveraging to make our products more functional and more flexible, hopefully at a fraction of the cost. Office 365 actually hasn't been around that long. So when we were started, we used to do SharePoint on-premise development as well as custom solutions. And then over the years, we've recreated all of our products on the Office 365 framework. So everything I'm showing you today is sort of latest and greatest using new technology, C#, MVC, hosted on Azure. None of it is, archaic, that's been around for decades or anything like that. It's all the latest. So that's an intro to us. On this diagram, I tried to tell you basically, here's the architecture of what a portal is, right? And a portal in our world really starts here. And what this is an Office 365 SharePoint site. So I could create sites using Office 365 and I could invite external users, right? Microsoft has opened up this tool to collaborate not only with internal employees, but with people outside my organization. A whole concept, sometimes you hear it called B2B or external sharing or guest users. They're all sort of indicating the same thing, that I am now using these tools outside of my company. And we add an app to that, right? So this, of course, tool hosts apps, and we could add our app to that, and we're gonna add our app DynamicPoint, right? And what our app does is, in a nutshell, is it establishes these connectivities to these various systems, whether it be ERP or CRM systems. We can now subscribe to data as it exists in these various applications. So what does that mean, right? Like, what am I going to do with this data? Depends really on the audience, right? With a vendor, maybe I want to show them such things as purchase orders and invoices and shipments and things that I would normally want to collaborate with on a vendor. For customers, it's things obviously like customer invoices or shipment status or order fulfillment details or inventory or invoices or sales orders, right? Like all these things that I would normally want to collaborate with my customer. Service cases, if I'm a service organization. So it really depends on the audience, on the type of data that we could connect to enable this portal. And then, down here we have this whole Office 365 suite. What that is doing is, again, we now have the framework, and we're going to use these tools to do such things as add reports using Power BI. We're going to add workflows using Power Automate. We could create apps using Power Apps. We can have all these tools at our disposal to make this overall portal solution more flexible. So that's what we're going to walk through. Here's some sample objectives. These are some that I've talked about. Why would I create a portal? On the customer side, you can see here such things as, collaborating on contracts, company information, order entry, inventory, payment processing, help desk. On the vendor, it's sort of the same idea, but of course the flip side, right? POs, shipment, RFPs, that's a big one, collaborating on RFPs and things like that. And then the employee portals seem to be all over the place, right? Sometimes they're more HR related, such as I could see HR data. Sometimes they see more project management. Other times it's more operational based. So we're going to focus on these first two. Those seem to be the more novel ideas, because SharePoint has always sort of been a employee collaboration tool, but customer and vendors, something new within the last 5 years or so. All right, so enough of the PowerPoint. Let's get out of there. And we don't need that. And we're going to go ahead and open up portals. And I have all kinds of portals, right? All kinds of examples to walk us through. The thing to note is they're using the same product. I've just configured them differently. So it's just different use cases based on different companies. And I'm going to start with my customer portal. So here's my customer portal. This is an Office 365 SharePoint site. You can see it by the URL. And the only thing, quote unquote, magic about it or different is that we've added our app. And our app is going to allow us to call data from various sources, including such sources as, Dynamics GP, Business Central, other ERP applications, or just SQL or CRM as well. And as you can see, I have various calls to action that I want my customers to do, to look at sales orders, maybe create new ones, create service orders, invoices, returns. If I scroll down a little bit, I have contracts, company information, managing my profile, contacting us, etc. And then I have a reseller scorecard here. So this is an example of a Power BI report that I'm sharing that is being filtered for this customer. So something to note is these customers must log on to this site, right? This isn't just the public internet. If I were to, launch an incognito session so it doesn't know who I am, and I would try to go to this portal, it's going to ask me, of course, to authenticate, right? And it's going to prompt me for my login. So this portal has been shared with everyone. It's not something that's, open on the public internet. Now, and I have a few other things here, document libraries, event calendars, just to show you ideas, right? So take a quick pause, who is this good for? It's really good for B2B type relationships, right? It's not intended to be an Amazon-esque e-commerce solution, right? You don't see, catalogs and add to cart and things like that. It's more of geared towards companies that are collaborating with other companies, businesses to businesses, either on the customer side or the vendor side. Talk about look and feel. I have a couple simple designs. They look pretty similar. I have a different dark background on my vendor portal or whatever. But as far as the layout, if you don't like my layout, I'm not the least bit offended. By no means am I a designer in life. Microsoft provides us templates, right? So they have this site that you could go look at called the Lookbook that gives us various templates on how we want to make our sites look. And if you're using a portal, I tell people to go look at these and get inspiration. Like, I like this layout, or I like the calls to action on this page, etc. And you could download into these and add them right to your tenant, or just use them for inspiration, whatever your preference. But that's what I say from a look and feel perspective. You get to brand this portal, you get to look at and make it obviously specific to your company, but you have some templates or guides along the way. All right, so let's go back to our portal and let's start showing some functionality. So I'm going to click on sales orders. I sort of start simple and make my way up from there. And if you look at that little working on it, that's going to come up in a brief second. It is querying the underlying data for the ERP application in this case, because that's where I'm maintaining sales orders, and it's filtering it for my authenticated user. So what does that mean? I'm logged into the portal. It knows my email. My email is in the ERP. I could determine my customer number and then only show the sales orders that are applicable to my customer. Now, when I share data in the portal, I can enable not only read or create or edit, but I could also start doing report generation and things like that too. So this one, like I said, I sort of start simple and then I make my way into more sophisticated examples as we go on. So this is a list of sales orders, right? I could see the status of it. If I want to look at my orders or go into any details, I could drill into them. I could go into the items associated to it, maybe look at tracking numbers and things like that. So it's basically giving a window into that data for my customer, so they don't have to call me. I don't have to email them anything. They could just go look at it on their own, and with this whole concept of self-service. If for some reason they want to print an order, I could call the underlying ERP report and then generate it in real time in the portal. So if I click that print icon, you saw that little wheel again, and what it's doing is calling that report, passing whatever order I clicked on, and rendering it as a PDF in the portal. A PDF obviously is the more portable one, so that's why we render it as a PDF. I could save it, I could print it, I could do whatever I want. So in that simple example, I'm looking at my orders, I'm generating a sales order report. Okay, keep that concept, and now let's get a little bit more sophisticated. Let's say I want to create an order or edit a sales order. This is the same data, but in this case, I've enabled edit, right? So maybe if my order hasn't shipped, or if it's in a given status, I want to, update the sell to, right? So I could give them permission to edit information. Maybe I want them to create the report or an order. Creation, again, leverages that business logic of the ERP. So you can see it's walking me through a couple steps here. By clicking that create button, it's calling the underlying data within the ERP, and it's going to default all of the information, just as like Business Central or GP or whatever your ERP is doing. So you can see it defaulted all my bill to and ship to information, and then I could go add items directly from my catalog. Any configuration from the underlying ERP is now exposed, right? So such things as price list, item availability, we're not replicating any of this data to the portal, we're just communicating it in real time. So all of the prices and whatever else that I have configured is being respected in the portal. Oops. And then I could do, things like submit it or update it. So as I'm interacting in this portal, any of my interactions can be triggers for either workflow or notifications, right? So if I were to open up my email here, you could see I'm getting various notifications of this activity that's going on in the portal. So that was the order I just created. You can see here's what I changed on a sales order. I've updated a quantity. I updated a sell to city, old value, new value. So it's highlighting all that information for me. Take that same concept. Oops, I'm sorry, before I go there, what data is available? Really whatever you want, right? Because in the world of Business Central, I could expose any of these pages as web services is which we're using to communicate with. So if I want to click on invoices and look at that, then that's fine. If I want to print invoices, if I want to do returns, etc. Multiple locations, just got a question. Would it display all locations? The short answer is yes, right? Locations is just an attribute. Can we use it to filter? Of course, right? So if you don't want to show all locations, you don't have to, but by default, it would show all locations on such things as orders. So good question. Okay, take that same concept and apply that to a vendor portal. Just different data, that's all it is, right? So now as opposed to looking at sales orders, of course, I'm gonna show my vendors purchase orders. I'm gonna give them maybe the ability to acknowledge things or change expected delivery dates. I don't think I would ever give my vendors the ability to create a PO because that sort of sounds like silly, but maybe I want them to update various information. Maybe I want them to submit documentation, such as responses to RFQs or attachments or technical documents that they could upload directly in the portal. If I go print something here, of course, it's not going to call a sales order report, it's going to call a purchase order report. Another good question came in. When I log into the portal, are they using multi-factor authentication? Short answer is it's up to you. If I log into the portal, just as you can enable multi-factor authentication on internal users, you can enable multi-factor authentication on portal users as well. So that is configurable, again, using that Office 365, sometimes referred to as Azure Active Directory authentication. So those are POs, right? So as you could, and of course, I'm going to generate some notifications here, or maybe approvals that things like the delivery date has changed and the PO has been acknowledged. So again, any action in the portal I could trigger either an email or workflow, etc. So we are going to take a pause here and go back to our presentation, because what we are doing thus far is sort of working on elementary portal functionality, right? And that's the idea that I could share data and I could generate reports. And that's all fine and good, right? That's, self-service. I could go see data. I could allow people to, access it whenever they want, and I don't have to send them reports or anything like that. But as we start getting more sophisticated with this tool and using Office 365 functionality, we could sort of work our way up this value chain, right? And we could start introducing not only workflows, but business automation, the processes that were previously done manual. And this is, important in this day and age because everyone's trying to, fight inflation and save costs. So the more I could automate, again, using a tool I already own, Office 365, the better, right? Because then my employees could be more efficient, or maybe I don't have to hire more or whatever. So let's look at some examples of what this means. Vendor onboarding, right? If I'm an organization where I onboard a lot of vendors, it could be a little bit of a pain. I need to request a vendor, maybe from someone in the business, right? So they're going to put some details of the vendor and things like that. We're going to collaborate with this vendor. We probably have to at least get some documentation to them, the W-9, some data, maybe a contract. And then we want to, do some approval and automatically create that vendor in the ERP. So this is the example I'm going to walk you through. And, it's not, we're using the portal as sort of the framework for all this because it's enabled to data sharing, but a lot of what I'm gonna show you is just using that Office 365 technology, things that most of our customers already own. So let's get to it. Let's go look at a vendor onboarding example. And on my vendor portal here, I have a link to request a new vendor. Now, in my world of doing vendor onboarding, sometimes this is triggered, right? Like if I create a new vendor, or if I send out an NDA or something like that, then I want to trigger this process. And that's fine too. For the sake of demo, I have a simple Microsoft form that you can see right here. Of course, it's powered by Forms that someone in the business would fill out if they want to work with this vendor. And I'm going to use myself, of course, so I get to be the vendor here and show you both sides, the company side as well as the vendor side. And I'm going to go ahead and request it. And I'm going to open up my email here. And what this is going to do is start sending me emails. And on these emails, you're going to see here pretty quick that I've invoked a DocuSign template. You don't have to integrate with DocuSign. DocuSign is a very powerful tool for doing government forms, of which if I click on the review this, you're going to recognize the W-9. And it also allows me to capture digital signatures. And by the way, they are connectors from Power Automate. So by me filling out that form, which was hosted on a SharePoint site, I've initiated a workflow, right? Because that was my trigger for a Power Automate workflow that has called a DocuSign template to send to this vendor. So let's just fill out some of these fields to give you the idea here. So 379, whatever, I could fill out some information. I have some sample form. This is my attempt to show you some of the functionality of the form. And then of course, I've used a W-9 here. And again, I won't bore you with typing it all in. I'll go sign it. That's one of the big benefits of doing this on DocuSign is the digital signature. And then I can finish it. So the vendor has now, sort of done their part. Obviously, it could be more sophisticated than that. Maybe I want to get banking information and routing data and things like that, so I could pay them. But in this case, it was just a simple onboarding form. So moving forward in my workflow, I now have an internal approval request. And as you can see, this called Power Automate's approval action, which I could do from email. If I go to Teams, I could see it there. So I will get an alert here sent on Teams. It's really up to you on how you want to approve these. There's also a mobile app. But what this is giving me is a link to this form for me to review it. So now I'm pretending to be a manager, obviously within the company, and an ability to approve or reject it. This looks good. So I could go look at that form, make sure everything looks good, make sure all the vendor data is good, and then I'm going to submit it. So after the manager approves it, then what do I want it to do? Well, I probably want to let the vendor know, congratulations, you're now a registered vendor in our system. So I will send them an email, which I will get here in a brief second, basically stating just that. And don't hold it against me. I didn't make this email too pretty. You could obviously brand it a heck of a lot better than I did, but you could say you're a new vendor in our system. To access the portal, click here. So not only have I invited them, but I also shared the portal with them so they could drill right into it and have access. So that was the other part of it. And then the other thing that occurred is I actually created that vendor in the ERP. So I created that in Dynamics such that now that vendor is set up. So that was one example. Let's take that and apply that to the customer side. What would I want to do there? Contracts, maybe. Contracts are expiring. I'm going to give them a notification of the expiration. I want them to do some stuff to renew it, maybe send some contracts. Maybe I want an approval of that, and then I want to update the ERP. Let's go look at that. Customer portal, go to my contracts. So here I'm going to initiate this from the portal. In real life, I would probably use my expiration date to send them reminders, right? Like, hey, your contract's expiring. Given it's hard to stage all that, I'm going to initiate it by clicking the renew button. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one of these. So let's just go down this one and click renew. And as you can see, it's just showing my expiration date. And then I have a little message here saying, renewing just isn't as simple as clicking an email or clicking a button. You're going to get an email with further instructions. So you've sort of requested your renewal. That was initiated from the portal. Of course, we're going to have a workflow there that's taking care of the heavy lifting, and that was kicked off in the background. So again, if I go open up my email, lo and behold, I'm gonna have here, oh, wrong one. So here it is, again, I've used DocuSign here in this case. I didn't have to, but I'm gonna present the customer with a new contract. For the sake of demo, I just used our end user license agreement, and I'm gonna capture their electronic signature. In real life, I'd probably want to fill out more information, maybe give them a survey. How's your experience been with us thus far? What can we do to improve? All kinds of opportunity for that type of automation through this renewal process. So I'm going to hit finish. Again, same idea. It's going to kick off an internal review. So here I have that contract renewal request. Last time I did it from email, so maybe this time I'll open it on Teams just to show you it there. Same idea. I have this link to the completed form. I could double check to see what the customer did. Look at their signature, whatever else I require them to fill out, and then approve or reject it. So I could say this looks great, good, and approve it. And I did get an email notification there, as you can see, that it has been approved. Now, what happened next, right? If I go back here, my contract terms are set for a year. So if we all look at our watches, today's the 17th, and I refresh my screen, it's going to requery the latest information from the ERP, and then one of these should be a year out. Ta-da, that's when I clicked, right? So now it's 5/17. So I've updated the ERP with the new expiration date. So by no means are those intended to be end-all, examples. They're just supposed to get you thinking, right? Because now I have a portal. I have the ability to trigger workflows with user interaction. RFP is a big one. I could send all kinds of vendors RFPs. I could invite them to upload documents or technical specifications. So, it's not, my examples here were not intended to be an end-all, just to get your mind thinking about the various options that are available using this technology. So looks like we are running quickly out of time here. So I'm going to go ahead and leave you with some reading. These links, of course, we'll share when we send out the presentation. But what I wanted to do highlight, is there's a fair amount of Microsoft documentation on this. This isn't something I could take credit necessarily for inventing the concept. So Microsoft has published some how-to articles using their B2B extranet and collaborating with customers and vendors using their portal functionality based on SharePoint technology. And then on our website, of course, we have a lot of data. So you'll have these links when I send out the presentation. It'll give you, if you're interested in learning more, some more reference points. Like I said, I can't necessarily take credit for inventing it all. What we've done is added our app to include data from the ERP, as well as the integration from the various workflow technology and reports as well. So we're basically augmenting this idea or making it better, but we really owe that to Microsoft for enabling external users. And I did have another question to come in. External users, do they cost you anything? Do you have to license customers and vendors? The short answer is no, right? Because with your Office 365 subscription, you get unlimited external users. So that's a nice fact, is inviting customers, the more the merrier, because they're not going to cost you anything. And my watch is showing right at the bottom of the hour here. So if there is no further questions, I will leave you with our contact information, as well as thank you everyone so much for coming, and Kat for hosting us, and wish everyone a great day. Thank you again for joining, and take care.